Hey now, Rob here, Rob School of Music, and I don't even know where to begin because we're talking to one of my favorite drummers and one of my favorite bands who wrote probably the coolest book about drumming you're ever going to find. It's Ilan Rubin from Nine Inch Nails, author of Start Somewhere to Go Somewhere.
Thank you for having me here.
Absolutely, brother. Absolutely. Thank you for being here. You know, when I saw this book was coming out, like my music school, we have a brick and mortar school here, 40 minutes north of New York City. And our whole teaching style is very organic and, we'll find the path for everyone. And we don't use books really at all. We kind of just do what is specific. And when, I read about this, I was like, this is going to be cool because this is going to be an amazing resource because you're literally providing things.
Hey now, Rob here, Rob School of Music. I'm going to take a quick minute of your time interrupting this video to let you know that my guitar course, I Can Play Guitar, is on sale currently at icanplayguitar.com. This is everything you would learn in your first year of guitar education with me in a convenient choose your own adventure program. It's going to tell you all sorts of songs, the names of the strings, scales, customized backing tracks, all of your chords, bar chords, power chords, open chords, scales. Did I mention scales? Customized licks that I wrote just for you guys to learn that you can play over any type of music, and it is on sale right now. icanplayguitar.com.
Intermediate, advanced, and we're finding so many cool ways to incorporate it to every student. So thank you for making this.
I'm happy to hear that. Thank you very much.
Absolutely, dude. So let's start at the start before we dive into the book. The first question I usually like to ask is, what was there a particular concert or record or experience that as a young kid or young teen or whenever it happened, you're like, that's what I want to do with my life?
Honestly, no. I was fortunate to grow up in a musical household, but not so much in the sense that, both my parents were musicians and they intended on their kids being musicians. My dad was a musician growing up and then became a responsible adult and, had a family and went into business and all that fun stuff. So I'm the youngest of three. And as my two brothers discovered music before I did, I was really drawn to the instrument itself. The drums were set up in the garage and something was fascinating about them. Could have been the volume, could have been the way they looked. I have no idea. It feels like lifetimes ago. But I got into the instrument and thought I could do that. And I suppose my dad realized I had a semblance of rhythm. But the next step that kind of ties into your actual question is that once he saw I had an aptitude for it, he said, all right, if you're going to play drums, I want you to listen to this. Got me Led Zeppelin 1, and I've been a fanatic ever since. So that's how that went. It wasn't this sort of epiphany of, oh, I want to do that and I have to learn how to do it. I started doing it and my dad said, okay, if you want to do that, here you go. Here's the blueprint.
That's actually very incredible. My personal experience is not all that different. My dad is a drummer. There was drums in the house. I'm a lefty. So when I sat behind the drums, I played open just naturally, as you discussed in the book as well. My dad didn't pay much mind to that or try and set the drums up left ear. When he got me a guitar later on, he still got me a righty guitar. So I have adapted to righty, but I think that was another cool thing in this book is you play open, and that's very fascinating to me.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, we can save the lefty, righty, open-handed top for when we get into the book if you'd like, but yeah, I appreciate that you've had a similar affliction of sorts.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. All right, let's go further into the journey. So, because the journey ends with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So that's not a common path. So congrats. Awesome. Crazy epic. Cool.
I'd like to look at that point as the middle because that happened at 32. I'm 36 now. I'd like to think there's a lot more beyond 36, but
absolutely. Yes.
Fingers crossed.
Yes. Oh, dude. Yeah. 100%. What was the journey like? Okay. So you're playing, you're into it. Was it, did you start a band? Did you join a band? What was your practice routine like?
Well, I'll tackle each of those. As far as practice routine, this might be disappointing to some listeners or viewers out there. I was never the type to have a strict regimen of any kind. I played when I was in the mood to play. Fortunately, I was in the mood to play very often. So I've come to realize, at least as far as the way I work, I like to do things when I'm in the mood to do them, when I'm most excited, because I feel like when you're focused, when you're open, when you're in the zone, so to speak, you can accomplish and retain so much. I feel like people who force themselves to practice for a really long period of time, granted, if they're getting something out of it, fantastic, but you kind of do get into a point of diminishing returns, or it can even feel like when you're reading a page of a book and you're not really paying attention, you realize I didn't retain the last 4 paragraphs or whatever it was. When it comes to a craft or a trade or whatever it is that you're learning and you want to actually improve, I feel like time is best spent doing it while you're in the mood to do it.
I like
So
that.
that's always been my philosophy. And it could be as simple as play drums for 20 minutes, go do something else, come back for 20 minutes, so on and so forth. And obviously, if you're in the zone, in the mood, and you're focused, play as long as you want. But I guess the long story long here is that I've never forced myself to play for long periods of time. And I don't think that necessarily equates to productive use of time. So there you go.
I agree.
What were your other questions were, did I start a band? So I did not start a band. Now, I played in bands from 9 years old, I would say, and that is entirely due to my older brothers being of high school age when I was a growing musician. So I joined their band, and that's what I did from about the ages of 9 to about 13 or 14 or so. And then I joined my next band from about 14 to 16. That's when I learned the hard lesson of being signed to a major label and dropped 8 months later. That one hit home very early on, which I suppose always made me realize how fickle the industry is, and that even if things seem okay or like they're on the up and up, you always got to prepare for the worst. Join another band, so on and so forth. And I joined 9 Inch Nails, Angels and Airwaves, and here we are at the current. And I don't mean to gloss over so much. It's just that in hindsight, you kind of see the linear trajectory, whereas when you're in it, it just seems like chaos and you realize, how did I get here? But there you go.
When it came to 9 Inch Nails, because you brought it up, so now I'm going to go there. What was that experience like getting into that band? I mean, there's been songs that like Trent straight out said, like Perfect Drug, like that can't be done live, and now you've done it live. So like how did you do that, man? It's amazing.
Well, I will speak very frankly with you, and I hope it's not misconstrued by anybody in any way, but I was obviously very fortunate to join 9 Inch Nails in general, let alone when I did. So I guess Trent first saw me play when I was about 19 years old on a festival bill in the UK. It was either Reading or Leeds, and it's a great festival, a legendary festival. So I was lucky to be in that situation. Lucky that Trent actually took the recommendation from a dear friend of mine to actually go watch me play. So the following year, I was 20. Josh Freese announced that he was leaving, and I got an email from Trent. So, of course, I was very excited. I leapt at the opportunity, learned the songs he had me learn, and I flew out to a sound check of the Lights in the Sky tour. Now, you may be aware of what that was, but for those who aren't, go look up the Lights in the Sky tour. It was an incredible production on the kind of Slip album cycle. So I got to audition there, get the job, so to speak, and then watch the show and think, wow, this is what I'm going to be a part of when there's the sort of changing of the guard, when Josh goes and does his thing and I come in to do mine. So a tremendous amount of material to learn, as you can imagine. At the time, I think I had to learn about 50 songs. And then as a cycle continues, hey, why don't we add this? Why don't we add that? And then by the end, you're, just shy of 70 songs. And so I prepared. I really put my time into it, of course. And when I showed up at rehearsals, it was unlike anything I'd been a part of because it was highly professional and focused. So as ridiculous as it may sound, coming from a then 20-year-old, I genuinely felt, oh my God, finally, I'm in a band that knows what they're doing. They appreciate what is going on, and everybody demands excellence. Now I was fortunate enough to play in the bands that I played in, because, as I said, in hindsight, that linear trajectory of one thing leading to the next is very clear. But I always felt like, I'm not speaking about anybody specifically, but the feeling I got with almost every musician I encountered who had a modicum of success was that they didn't appreciate it, and they kind of took it for granted. So to step into, even then, a legendary act, and since then it's been 15, 16 years more legendary. But I felt like finally I'm home. I'm where I want to be. So that was that. And I know you mentioned Perfect Drug, and here's where I don't want anything to be misconstrued. I never understood what the problem was with that song not being able to be performed live. Now, I'm quoting as you were quoting. I mean, I don't know why Josh or whoever else, Jerome Dillon, I'm not exactly sure that Trent's issue was the drums, so to speak. But what I came to realize early on is that when you're playing with loops or other rhythmic elements, it's not best to try to mimic every little thing, because machines are machines and people are people. So the key to me was figuring out how to do as much of the intricacy without taking away from the feel. So you have to kind of learn how to integrate with what's there. And maybe it's just the way I looked at it, but it felt like I fell into the groove, so to speak, of how to play with and off of all of the stuff, because it's a pretty heavily layered production, that song. Mm-hmm. So I felt like I never understood what the big issue was, whether it wasn't Trent's favorite song and he kind of just, anytime they played it at rehearsals, it didn't seem exciting. That could have been, I don't really know. But I was excited because there's this sort of lore that was built around this song being something impossible. And I felt like it came together pretty quickly, So when we got to let's say the ending sequence, the classic drum loop, I learned that note for note and I play that, but there's a whole window within there where I'm just improvising and changing it up every night. That's awesome. Then you tack on some backing vocals and some piano at the end of the song. It's always an exciting thing to play. But I took it in stride, and people seem to be satisfied with the live performance. And I say that as a band, it could have gone the other way, where it's like, oh, they finally played it, and now I see why they didn't. People enjoyed it, and it went well. So I hope we continue to play it.
Yeah, man. I'll be at both Brooklyn shows and a Philly show.
Excellent.
So give me one of those three.
I will see you there. Yes.
When you're presented with these 50 songs to learn, because that's something that I find with the students here, and a lot of the musicians I've spoken with, like the digesting of tremendous amounts of material and how to remember everything. Do you chart stuff out? Do you just bang it out and put it all in your mind? Like what steps do you go through?
I put it all in my mind. I don't chart anything out unless there's some kind of really intricate or quirky thing where it almost helps you absorb the material when you actually go about writing it. When I'm in the studio and I know I'm never going to have to play songs again, I will chart them out. They kind of stay in the short-term memory. And once I'm done with the session, I move to trash and I forget whatever it is that I recorded. But when it comes time to performing as a band, I think it's best to truly absorb the material by listening. And as silly as it sounds, listening and just becoming well acquainted with the material, I think, is the most important thing. And while that may sound like common sense, when you're going through 50 songs or whatever it may be, or you're looking at a set list, you don't have the opportunity to be like, which one was that again? Mm-hmm. You need to be able to hear the song as you see the name of it on a piece of paper. That's when you really know the material. And of course, you need to know the structures, but I don't think it's best to see things in terms of numerical structure. Like, okay, verse 1 is 16 bars. Right. I don't think that helps. But what I do think helps is, verse 2 is half the length of verse 1. Okay, that helps you kind of see things in in broad strokes that are useful, and it's an easy question to answer. You're not thinking about it, because thinking about things ruins things in the moment, you know? So you just really need to absorb it. And I mean, I guess this one thing comes to mind. The only time I've ever charted out a Nine Inch Nails thing, for example, was a song that was never played live. We played it at rehearsals maybe 2, maybe 3 times in succession in 2009. It's a song off the Slip called Demon Seed. And the loop is very intricate. It's cut up in bizarre places. And me just, no pun intended, wanting to nail it. I wrote it out, and I wanted to really absorb every little nuance because, I wanted to impress. And I charted it out. I memorized it. I played it note for note. And, not that the point of playing the song was for me to impress people, but, the laughs were there of like, oh, that sounds like the song. We did it, but it never went beyond that point. Some things just don't work, or they're kind of just better left on an album, perhaps. But fun nonetheless, but rarely do I chart things.
I get that totally, man. For me as a guitar player, and then when I'm teaching guitars, a common thing is they get stuck on, well, how many down strums, how many up strums, and these little minute details. And I'm like, feel it, just feel it. Because and I say to them, like, you watch your favorite artist playing that song, they're not consistent. It's how it sounds. It's how it feels, but it's not like down, down, up, down, 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 up. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, it's way too easy to get lost in the details that nobody notices.
Yes.
And it's not just about, if, there are plenty of other things that people aren't going to notice that you pay attention to. There's like the old thing where you might think, oh, the show was shitty and there were so many mistakes, and people would go, what are you talking about? That was a great show.
Right.
There are a multitude of levels that people don't pay attention to or are aware of. But when you get to that level of detail, they definitely won't know, is what I'm trying to say.
Yes, absolutely. Well, then connected to that, I guess the third part to that overarching thought is, how do you manage nerves when coming into situations like that, or stage fright or things like that? I mean, I'm sure at this level that's a long time ago, but maybe it's not. I don't know. Like, what is your pre-show routine? Like, what's going on in your head?
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what. Fortunately, I've never had stage fright, and I suppose I can attribute that to having played live from such a young age. When you're young, you're not really aware. You're just doing what you need to do. And fortunately, it just became part of my being, so to speak. Performing on stage is a very natural thing to me. That being said, as time progressed, I found that I truly hated and continue to hate the time leading up to the show.
Yes.
So the waiting around, the anxiety. Now, this isn't anxiety about nerves of, I don't want to make a mistake. Because the second I hit the stage, I'm like, oh, finally, okay, some peace. I can do what I'm supposed to do. But I detest waiting around. So in terms of that, I try to distract myself. In terms of my playing style, I really do spend more time stretching than, say, doing rudiments at a pad. I will do that for the sake of just focusing on something and passing the time, but stretching is more important. I suppose that has to do with a lot of the bands I play with or have played with are more on the energetic side, and I do tend to be a more animated player, so to speak. So stretching has become more important in the old age. It's mid-30s. It'll get you.
That's rough. Wait till your beard turns white, and then
it's coming in here. It's coming in here. But yeah, so, have a beer, chit chat, but just pass the time. I secretly wish that somebody would just tap me on the shoulder and be like, hey, the show's right now. You don't have time to think. You just go out and do it. But yeah,
I hear that entirely. Last question before we get into the book is on your own music, the New Regime. I love your music.
Thank you.
Absolutely, dude. What is the process on that? You're doing all the instruments, you're creating it. Is there more coming? Like where does that occupy in your mind?
Okay. Well, I will, first things first, I love that you're aware of the New Regime stuff. Now, this is kind of ridiculous in a sense, but let me explain. So for those who don't know, the New Regime was the moniker under which I performed as. So my solo project where I wrote, played, and sang everything, but with the sort of title and visibility of it being a band, so to speak, even though it was all me. So all intents and purposes, a solo project. Now, I consistently released music from about 08 or 09 till about 2020. And I released an album about a couple of weeks before the pandemic hit, or at least when lockdown started. So that was a colossal gut punch because it was my first non-independent release. So there was supposedly a team on board and all that fun stuff. I was on tour. We were supporting Silver Sun Pickups, and then the world ended. So at that point, I just felt like, okay, we don't know how long this is going to be. You know, the illusion of the pandemic being done by July was long gone. And I just realized, look, I don't want to pick up where I left off if this is a year, if this is 2 years. So I kind of decided to close the chapter on the new regime and open a new chapter of solo music under my own name. So if you haven't heard that, look up Ilan Rubin on the streaming platform of your choice. And I've put out about, I want to say 9 or 10 one-offs, singles over the last 3 years or so. Wow. And the thought process behind that, and again, writing, playing, and singing everything. And this stuff is a bit different to the new regime, although, as I said, ad nauseum, it is all me again. It is different, and it kind of just felt like a new beginning. And I also realized that one of the last tours that the new regime did, funny enough, was supporting Angels and Airwaves. So I would go and do a 40-minute set as the new regime, get off stage, change over, take off my jacket, go right back out and do an hour and 20 minutes playing drums for Angels and Airwaves. Now, I would treat that support slot as I would have treated any. I would go, to the merch booth at the end of the night and be available and meet people. And the amount of people night after night who would either tell me that I looked like the singer in the new regime or the drummer in Angels and Airwaves eventually drove me a little crazy. And a decade plus, the epiphany finally hit. I'm not doing myself any favors by presenting myself under a different name, because too many people are not getting that. So all of that combined just led me to the point where I said, you know what? Let's have a semblance of starting anew, and that's that. So plenty of music under my own name. I'm working on plenty more, but things are exciting right now and things are busy. So it's very hard to kind of jigsaw everything, especially in terms of scheduling.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to check all of it out, because you just made my day, because I didn't know that existed. So thank you.
Did you? Oh, my pleasure. I pardon me if I didn't answer part of your question. Did you ask about how I go about writing or how that works, or?
Yeah. What's your process? Because I find a lot of people who are doing everything, that can be extremely liberating, but also sometimes stifling, because you're everything. So does that, which lane does that occupy for you?
I do find it to be liberating, I have to say. And the idea of me doing a sort of multi-instrumentalist solo project initially came about by wanting to feel free and liberated, because a lot of people in other bands felt threatened by my ability on other instruments, and I just had this thought where I realized, if I can play these instruments well, but I can't sing, what's the point? Because that is the most important part of the music generally. And it's the thing that allows you, or would allow me, to truly do everything by myself. So I pretty much forced myself to do it. And there's nothing like, in my experience, coming up with the seedling of an idea, whether it be a riff, a chord progression, a melody. In your mind, you're picturing what the other instruments are going to do. You go through coming up with the parts, tracking it, going through the mix, finally approving the mix. And yes, although by the end of it, I am sick to death of the song, bringing that sort of vision to life is the most satisfying thing to me. So In terms of actually writing, it could start from the guitar or the piano. Those are my two songwriting instruments. Occasionally, there have been a beat or two in the past where I thought, okay, I'm going to base a song around this. There could be a loop or a sequence or something that just makes me mumble a melody. And then as soon as I'm mumbling a melody, the song will take shape. That's when I realize, okay, I have something here, because anybody can riff around or string chords together, but unless you have a melody that excites you to continue the writing process, I don't think there's anything there. So chords, whatever, melody, excitement, and then the rest kind of runs its course.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah. I mean, it's fun to listen to because, I mean, how would you know that it's all one person? But then to sit back and be like, wow, one person's doing a lot of different things. It's very cool.
Well, thank you. I mean, I do try to be conscious of, all right, I've got my bass player hat on. I've got my guitar player hat on, because I guess the thing that I really wanted to stress, or I have wanted to stress at other points in time, is like, I'm not playing the bass or the guitar on these things because I can. And again, speaking frankly, I play them well. I've spent a lot of time practicing and learning over my lifetime to where I do it because I know what I want to be done, and I can. So I do. So there you go. But I have to be conscious of what the other versions of me are doing and how they come up with a cohesive unit without feeling like there's slack anywhere, or like different versions of me are competing for spotlight. It's kind of like, without sounding pretentious, it's like looking at a score and saying, all right, these are the parts that I've come up with. And in moments where I've designated, say, a solo of some sort, that improvisational quality that then becomes a sort of distinct part, all of that's part of the fun for me.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. I love it, man. Very cool.
Well, thank you.
Yes, let's jump into the book. So I have so many questions about this. So I wrote a book during the pandemic. I put out a book, this book Shreds, and it's
I gotta check that out.
I'll send it to you, man. I will definitely send it through and it's like 20% story. Yeah, it's all. It looks like an amplifier.
That's good stuff.
Thank you. It's like 20% my story, and then 30% music education, but then 50% of it is sort of this holistic, like how music can change your life sort of stuff. And I think creating, a book, it's such a legacy product where, like, once the music has moved and people have changed, like, this will be here forever. So like, what was your, what was the spark that made you say, like, I want to do this?
Partly what you just said. I am a lover of books in general, be they music books, history books. The idea of hours upon hours of work, research, thought, culminating in a bunch of pages that are bound in there forever if you want them. That's a very inspiring and exciting idea. Now, I'm also a big fan of music education. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean you got to go to music school or, Berkeley or whatever it may be. If you want to learn, there's so much out there, and there's that space has grown exponentially with YouTube. I mean, there's anything you want to learn is out there, so as long as you want to do it, you can. Now, learning to read music, I think, is a very undervalued skill. And I say that as somebody who's only used it professionally 3 times, maybe 4. Okay. But when it comes to the piano, for example, or a drum book.
Wow.
Because what I did was, as a kid, I was self-taught for a while. So I felt like I had that kind of figured out mindset, which is invaluable because you're relying on your ear, you're relying on trying things out, and then something clicks and you've got it. Okay. Now, when it comes to, say, a classical pianist who has phenomenal skill, and classical music in all genres thereof are some of my absolute favorites. So I don't want this to sound as a dig in any way, shape, or form, but it's very much a notation-based art form. These people are not improvising. If it's not on the page, they don't know what to play. Okay.
Right.
So obviously reading and writing could be are a tremendous asset in terms of learning. But I think when you combine the two things, it enables you to learn what you want, when you want, and it also enables you to jot down ideas. You know, if you don't have a voice note and you don't have any way of recording something, right? How are you going to log an idea? So the fact that I could go and say, oh, I like this beat, and go, okay, there you go. I've got it. Whether I forget about it or not, it's there somewhere. So it's a great skill. And over time, I just always wanted to write a book. I felt like I had a unique perspective to draw upon. And as a fan of education, I thought, let me put this out there and hopefully people see what's there beyond just the notation. Because as you may have seen going through the pages, I mentioned somewhere, either in the preface or the afterword, if there is one, or somewhere in a chapter, I don't know, where I say, if you have gotten something out of one of these exercises that you've actually adapted to your own playing, I've done my job. It's not about being able to play exercise 45 perfectly. That's irrelevant. Yes. But if you got something out of it that you can actually use, great. And I think that's the point of learning things, unless you're in a strict sort of classical repertoire, sure. But every other art form or every other style of music, it's about application, in my opinion.
Dude, I could not agree more. And you're the first person who said that back to me. So you just validated my whole philosophy on teaching. When I show a guitar student a lick or something, I immediately say, when I put it down in front of them, I don't expect you to play it exactly as written. You're not me, you're you. Interpret it, and it just gives them this freedom to, obviously don't play all wrong notes, or maybe, but just that freedom to take it and use it as a bridge between what's on the page to what's going to come out of their hands or fingers. I love that. So very cool.
Well, good. I'm happy to hear that. I'm getting this memory as a kid, and because I know you're a guitar player, so we were talking about, you're not me, you're you. So kind of interpret it. I'm a Led Zeppelin fanatic. Okay, so when for example, the Heartbreaker solo in the middle, okay, you cannot play that note for note. It's impossible. When I say you, I mean anybody. Paige couldn't play that note for note after that, because it's an in the moment performance and it's improvised and it's all over the place in the most beautiful of ways. But when you try to learn it, you kind of need to figure out ways to make it work that are not perfect, but that get it across.
Yeah.
And I think that always stuck out to me as an example, because if you learn like a lead or a bass line, it's there. But this is one of those rare kind of moments in rock, at least, where it is a sort of unbound solo. Yes. That is so much in the feel of it, and the sort of general, A minor, general key, wherever it may be. And you have to find the ways of making it feel like you're playing it correctly. But only one man could do that at that time.
Yes. It's literally a snapshot of a moment, and you're trying to make it your own. Did you see the new Zeppelin movie yet?
I absolutely did.
Did you like it?
Did you see it?
I took my son to see it on Saturday. He was like, he's 13 years old. He's like, what is this? I'm like, dude, I told you.
Oh, fantastic. I absolutely loved it. I'll watch anything Led Zeppelin, but I didn't know how I was going to feel about it only covering such a short amount of time, but that was also what ended up being the most inspiring thing about it. You're watching this journey, and then at the end of it, in a way, no spoiler here, it's already been done for a long time now, but at the end, Paige says, from this point to that point was exactly 1 year. And when you just kind of feel that roller coaster with, sitting in a comfortable movie theater seat, you're like, well, I imagine actually doing that. And then 1 year later, ending up there, and then realizing how much further they went.
Right.
It's incredible. I love any kind of music documentary, whether I like the band or not. I find them interesting and inspiring. But of course, watching something like that of your heroes and something you love, it's just, it reignites some kind of excitement, at least in me. I love it.
Dude, and the theater I saw it in, a quick tangent, we'll come back, but they played it so loud. Like it was louder than any movie I've ever seen.
Exact same thing. And, I went to a sort of not a premiere or anything, but a sort of privileged screening, and I assumed that's why it was so loud. But I'm happy to hear that it was loud for you too. Oh, I love that.
like a rock show loud. Like
I hope people are
afterwards,
getting,
I was like, my ears like loud.
yeah, fantastic.
Cool.
I love that. There's nothing worse than like going to a show or watching something musical and it's just soft.
Mhm.
You can hear yourself speak clearly or something.
it's
It's like,
wrong.
no, it's good.
Yeah.
Part of the energy is conveyed in the, ooh, that's loud.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Okay.
Yes, the immersiveness, like you can't
Yes.
ignore it. It's just there.
I'm
Okay.
so happy to hear that. I thought I just got lucky, but bravo.
Yes, awesome. So in creating this, how did you select, which parts you're going to put in there? Because I mean, it's 184 pages. This is a dense, collection of so many different things that you could just kind of flip through it and just jump in, which what I like when I'm sitting behind the kid. I'm like, flip. Okay, I'm going to try this today. Oh, I can't play that shit. Okay, maybe I go a few before it. But like, what was how did you collect all these things? There's so much.
Well,
40 chapters.
Funny enough, I never ever thought it would be that long. Okay. And then funny enough, again, when I sort of submitted a sample chapter or a table of contents of what the book could be to Hudson, which was the publisher, they looked at the table of contents and they said, this looks like at least 2, maybe 3 books of material. So why don't you just focus on the first 4 chapters?
Oh.
And that'll be the book. Okay. So I was like, all right, fine, no problem. So ideas coming as they do when you're actually, because it's one thing to play, but when you actually think, okay, how am I going to put this idea down and expand upon it and get the point across and then move on to the next thing? As you're doing that, you're coming up with new ideas.
Right.
And this is unimportant, but there was this sort of like OCD side of me where it's like, well, if you did 10 exercises of this, the next one's got to be 10 as well.
Mm-hmm.
And the next one's got to be 10 as well. And then so on. Okay, you have 38 well, 38's not a good number. We got to make 40 chapters. Okay, how do I do 40 chapters? Just complete nonsense. But that was definitely a part of the process. But there was a lot of material there. And then I think at least what happened with me, and tell me if you had a similar experience with your book, you write something, or let's say in the paradiddles chapter or section of the book, the all things diddle section, which is then broken down into a bunch of subchapters. Yes, you got your single, double, triple, inverted, reverse, blah, 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 blah. But then you think, okay, wait, I technically can take this concept a little bit further, and I can take this one a little bit further. And in a way, I learned stuff while writing that. It's not like I had all this stuff in my mind and thought, okay, I'm going to write, and it ended up being 184 pages. You realize how you can improve on things, how to explain things. And one thing I will say, which sounds contradictory to what I was just yapping about, is that I did want the book to feel fairly concise. And so what I mean by that is these sections that we're taught, or these chapters, 40 chapters, they're 10 exercises per in a lot of them, or at least in the diddles section. I didn't want this kind of mundane, endless variations and permutations of each individual thing and displacing notes and accents. That stuff's amazing. And there are plenty of phenomenal classic books that have already done that. But I did not want this book to be that. I didn't want anybody to feel bored at any point. Right. So I wanted to keep the whole thing moving and not give the feeling of like, okay, we already did this, but it's a little bit different. I wanted everything to kind of have this trajectory of simple, a little more difficult, a little more creative. Okay. And then we move on to the next one.
Yeah.
So that was the approach.
It works, man, because it's like we have a library here at my school where I just archive as many educational books as I can get my hands on, because I too am a big reader and I too love education. So I just want to have it to be like, oh, let's grab this, let's grab that. And then, for the students and the teachers as well. The flow of this, it never feels mundane. It's building, but it's challenging, but it's also like you feel an achievement has occurred when you get to turn that page. Like, because I make, the videos and the things to make sure it's being done properly. Like, I don't know. I think it's just incredibly well done.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. And it's one thing because it's a real commitment to write a book, as you know.
Yeah.
And by the time you're done with it, you've put in countless hours. And just like anything, you hope that A, people find it and get it, and B, you hope that they enjoy it. So I'm very flattered and proud when people get out of the book what I wanted them to get out of it.
Yeah.
So I feel like, oh, great. I communicated what I wanted, and people are taking that in, which I loved. And I was going to comment on something that you just said, and it slipped my mind. So if I remember, I will come back to that.
Okay. In doing this, we spoke briefly earlier about playing open as you do. What was the choice in saying, okay, we're gonna deliver it this way versus like it's just so authentic to your style. It's almost teaching someone to play your way of playing, but at the same time, universal skills that are transferable. Like, where did that decision occur?
Yeah. Okay. Actually, this ties into the thing that slipped my mind. So
Beautiful.
One of the things in writing a book was I wanted it to be very apparent what makes my book different to all the other books that are out there, and that could be in a competitive sense, but just in the sense of wanting to actually have something to offer. Why would someone pick my book over somebody else's book? So you have to kind of crystallize a concept. Now, for better or worse, what would make me a unique player is that I am open-handed most of the time, but I switch over to playing right-handed when I move to the ride cymbal. And as I say in the introduction, that was a very innocent and naive discovery of mine. Story goes, without boring too many people, as I got into playing and my dad would show me stuff, often he'd say, all right, practice that. I'm going to go into the living room and you come out and get me when you think you've got it. And one of these days, I just realized that the hi-hat was closer to my left hand. Why am I bothering with crossing over? And I did it, and I played it fine. It felt comfortable. I went to go get my dad. I played the thing. He looked at me, and he had this strange expression, and he looked at me that way because it sounded right, but it looked wrong. Okay, wrong in quotes. And that's when I became an open-handed drummer. However, having already been familiar with playing traditionally as a right-handed player, some things still came easily to me. And as my sort of musical life continued, some things just came to me easier right-handed at the drum set. When I play rudiments and I start at the pad, I start right-handed.
Wow.
Probably because every book that I ever got that had sticking in it started right-handed. So I thought it would be a unique approach to have everything playable from left leading and right leading players. So all the exercises are pretty much mirror images of themselves. Okay. The left hand largely sticks to the high tom, rag tom, whatever you want to call it. The right hand sticks to the floor tom. And you really have to keep that in mind as you're writing things, because not everything directly translates, because, you could try to flip the mirror image of something and you'll end up with awkward crossovers that don't make any sense. So this was a conscious approach I needed to stick to as I was writing all of this stuff out. And the thing I wanted to say earlier is you mentioned that, some of it can be a little difficult, but it's all kind of approachable. And a lot of that, if not all of it, has to do with most of the stuff is straight 16th notes, straight 8th notes. The last chapter where I kind of mix everything together and write these little solos kind of shows how you can incorporate everything and be a little more creative. But they're straight 16th notes. So as long as you know what those mean, you can play them slowly. And the points of interest in syncopation come from when you're hitting the toms or when you're accenting something. It's not difficult to read, is what I'm trying to say. Yeah. So you can really get in at the ground level, and then you can do it. It's not like reading Afro-Cuban rhythms across 4 limbs and thinking, what the hell is going on here? You know,
Cut yourself into 4 pieces.
exactly.
That is so accurate. I gave this to our lead drum teacher here, and his note was, I like how it makes the difficult stuff, it's like it's broken down so it doesn't feel so unreachable, because it literally is, it's stacking skills. It's this plus this plus this equals that. Yeah, awesome. And then also, like, the way it's written out for me, because when I a lefty again, but I play righty, I lead with my left hand, so I trip on myself when I'm trying to do a fill. It's just a shit show. So like being forced to start with the proper thing and end the right way, it's providing a grid that I can stay inside of, but 2 different ways of looking at it. So that's helpful for me personally.
I'm so happy to hear that. So you're a right-handed guitar player, though.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's very interesting, because perhaps, so when you play left-handed, are you on a left-handed kit entirely, or you just play open-handed as well?
Open-handed. I feel lost on, I think if it was a left-handed kit, it might be easier to play those fills, but everyone else here is righty, so that's what we have here.
It's a similar, because what hand do you write with?
My left hand.
Okay, same. If you had to punch somebody or throw a ball,
left hand. But I was trained in martial arts, so they always made us go righty. But if I think I really got in a fight, I'd probably go. I don't really know, honestly. I throw the ball with the left hand, but I probably would punch with either.
You know, it's funny I say that, because you've actually punched somebody. I've never punched anybody. I've avoided fights my whole life, so I don't know. I went with punch, but throw, kick.
Yeah. Well, this was all through training. It was not in real life.
So I write left-handed, but aside from that and the hi-hat, everything else I do is left-handed. Everything else I do is right-handed.
Wow.
And all I can attribute that sort of mindset to is, the intricacy of playing the hi-hat, fretting on a guitar, all of that stuff. It's kind of like the left side of my body is a little more detail oriented and the right side of the body is a little more power oriented. So it just makes sense to me that way. And that's the only explanation I can come up with. It's funny though, because I've got a almost 19-month-old son. So he's starting to get to the point of, little art projects at
it's exciting age. Yeah.
And sometimes I notice the marker in his left hand. Other times I'll see him grabbing for things with his right, and I don't know which way it's going to go. So it's interesting to see.
What I do with parents who bring in a child who's they're a lefty, like they're say 5 to 7 years old, and they've decided they're left hand dominant. They don't know which type of guitar to get them. I tell the kid to play air guitar, and whichever one they organically strum, that's the one I try and start them on. Because I don't know if guitar truly is a lefty ready instrument. Like I can't do articulate, fancy finger picking stuff because my left hand is not my dominant hand, but I can chug James Hetfield rhythms perfectly fine. So that makes sense.
That's really funny, because occasionally I've caught people off guard. Well, they'll like do air guitar and be like, "You're left-handed?" And they'll be like, "How did you know?" I'm like, "Well, your fake guitar."
Yep.
Yeah. But
the magic trick.
Another funny thing to me is McCartney playing drums right-handed, because he's a full-on lefty, but he plays drums right-handed, right-footed. Yep. So I always found that interesting.
It's music, man. It's magic. It's all magic. We're pulling stuff out of the ether and just witchcraft or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
I would like to, at the end now, I do this rapid fire series of questions. It's like a this or that. So they're usually guitar centric, but I did write up some drum related ones.
You can hit me with guitar stuff too. That's fine. All this stuff back here is mine. So I'm very well versed in all things guitar. You hit me with whatever you want.
All right. I'm going to jump around that. Okay. So it's a this or that. The answer is always in real life, yes or both, but we don't want that. We want just one. So for example, would you prefer a humbucker or a single coil pickup if you had to pick one?
Humbucker.
Okay.
Do you want reasonings behind any of these
reasonings?
answers?
Are fine. Dude, you can justify it. You can do whatever you want. It's your show.
Okay. Nobody likes single coil hum.
Correct.
Okay. I love the sound of single coils. P90 is potentially my favorite pickup sound, so to speak. But I'm willing to take a humbucker with a coil tab as the best of both worlds.
It's funny you say that about the P90. My first nice guitar, my dad got me a Les Paul Studio Gem series, which is in like the late 90s, and it had P90s in it, but I didn't know any better. I just thought it was like a cream colored, weird looking, and I fell in love with the sound. I don't put humbucker. I don't put P90 as one of those questions because I feel like every guitar player secretly loves them and it's too easy.
They're incredible. And the first guitar I bought with my own money, because when I learned guitar and bass, I was just playing my brother's instruments. But when I bought my first guitar, I was a $5.99 Les Paul Jr. from Musician's Friend. A great guitar. I still have it to this day, but I wasn't aware of what the P90 was. I was like, I'm getting a Gibson for $600. And then as I played and record more and all that stuff, I just kept realizing how great this guitar sounded. And it's a P90.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's do a drum one. 3, 4, or 5 piece kit.
As my preference or what I think is best.
However you hear the question. However you hear the question.
4 piece.
Okay.
Even though I play a 5, let's go with 4.
It's okay.
Okay.
Fair. 2 bass drums or a double bass pedal?
Double bass pedal.
Steel snare or wood snare?
Steel.
24 frets or 22 frets?
22 frets.
Amp gain or pedal gain, meaning like distortion in the amp or pushing it with a pedal?
I have to elaborate on this. Okay. I am not a fan generally of amps with gain knobs, but I will gladly push a master volume until it distorts. So which one are we talking, preamp gain or power amp gain?
You're the first person to go so deep, so I'm just happy with that answer.
I'll take preamp. Power amp gain over everything.
Cool. Just blow your face off. I love it.
Yeah.
Wood tipped sticks or nylon tipped sticks?
Wood.
Preference of shells? Maple,
mahogany.
Birch, I don't know.
Mahogany.
Bass drum. 22, 24, 20?
26.
Okay. And circumference of your... Okay, cool. 26?
Yeah.
Epic.
26. And I'll tell you why. First of all, if Bonham had not been my idol since I was yay big, I don't know that I'd ever set my sights on a 26. But I actually find the 26 to be incredibly versatile. Okay, now people think, oh, it's so big, but it can only do one thing, and that's not true, because a 24 can sound like a bigger 22, and a 22 can sound like a bigger 20, and they all sound great. The 26, those extra 2 inches, pull the bass drum into a completely different world where you can play it with a hole, and it will just sound like a colossal bass drum, or you can have no hole in the head, and it will have this sort of boom that you won't get out of anything smaller. People may disagree, but that's the way I feel. I think we might be on a delay
We'll
here.
not argue.
Are we on a delay here?
Yeah, I caught you.
We
got caught up, I think.
All right.
All right. Well, it's like rendering. Do you hear me now?
I do. I will say
seconds later,
you can get massive sounds out of smaller drums, but there is a feel difference to a 26 that a lot of people hate. I happen to love it. It's very, very responsive because it's such a big
using
drum.
a 26 with 9-inch nails to 26.
Yes,
that's awesome. So cool. Okay, I have 5 more for you. These are effects related and then band related. The band ones suck. I apologize. If you had to choose delay or reverb?
Delay.
Okay. Phaser or chorus?
Phaser.
That's the right answer. That's the only one I have strong feelings about. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm right with you. Right there with you.
A wah pedal or a whammy pedal? Very different things, I know.
Very, very, very. Okay. When you say, I have to ask because I'm not a huge fan of either, but when you say whammy, okay, Are you thinking of dive bombs? Are you thinking about actual harmony? Are you thinking about octave up, octave down?
Like Tom Morello style. So all of the above, really.
See, when you say Tom Morello style, I go with a wah. If you say using like a Digitech whammy, like My Iron Lung, Radiohead, I love that glitchy, not great high octave tracking.
Yeah.
But the Wii U, that gets tiring very quickly.
Fair answer. And agreed.
And I do love a sort of cocked wah sound a la Brian May.
I love that
And
too.
I think Page is a very underrated wah pedal man.
Yes,
You know?
which in this movie, it was so front and center how much he relied on the wah in the beginning.
Yeah.
Very cool.
But
Very
a
cool.
big tonal shaper. But like,
Yes.
I think somebody, for example, has got to tap Kirk Hammett and be like, enough with the wah.
Yeah.
You know?
Yes. Agree. Okay. The last few are band ones. Beatles or Stones?
Beatles.
John or Paul?
Ah, this is fucked up, man.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry.
Paul.
We were almost friends and I ruined it.
No. I'm happy to. I mean, okay. Let's say I were asking that question, I wouldn't be offended by either answer.
Right.
Okay, but I feel like I have to give Paul. Paul has to be the answer because his songs outside of the Beatles, a lot of them. I mean, the best of Paul McCartney solo vastly trumps the best of the other Beatles solo, in my opinion. And then as a musician of incredibly admirable skill, whether it be as a singer or as a bass player, he was just a phenomenal musician, you know, not knocking John Lennon, you know, as a guitar player by any means, but in terms of just like, wow, people cannot do what that guy did. I think McCartney fills that role better.
Yes, I'm a Paul guy as well.
There you go.
Bowie or Dylan?
Bowie. Bowie. Yeah. You know what? I'm not huge on I'm not the biggest on either, and that doesn't mean I dislike either of them. It means I have not taken the obsessive deep dive that I've taken on the other things that have rocked my world, so to speak. But I feel like with the bit of Bowie that I do have in my repertoire, I have picked up more from it. But perhaps as a lyricist, I would get more from Bob Dylan. I don't know. Let's go,
good.
Bowie.
Good. Yeah, fair. I think I know the answer to this one, but Zeppelin or Floyd?
Oh, what a joke of a question.
Okay. Part 2.
Yeah.
Zeppelin 2 or Zeppelin 4?
I was going to go with 2, but you know, you can't knock 4. They're both flawless in my estimation.
Okay. Fair enough.
Sorry, that had to be a both. That's your fault.
The answer is Zeppelin. The answer is all of the above. But yeah.
Because
I'll be like Houses of Holy or Physical Graffiti, and it's like, yeah, it's all.
And that's tough. But I can honestly say, House of the Holy. If somebody put a gun to my head and said, "You have one album for the rest of your life," it would be House of the Holy, of any band, of anything.
Wow, it is.
It does something to my DNA every time I listen to it.
Amazing. I love that one as well. Okay, 2 more. Thank you for being a wonderful sport to this.
Oh, my pleasure.
We're going 90s, Pearl Jam or Nirvana?
I'd go Nirvana.
Okay. And then lastly, Sammy Hagar or David Lee Roth?
David Lee Roth, no question.
Instant answer. Boom.
You know,
Dude.
Perhaps if I needed and that's not knocking Sammy Hagar's talent, but if I needed investment advice, I'd go with Sammy Hagar. If I wanted the best version of Van Halen, I'd go with Diamond Dave.
Yeah. I look at it like this. I think Sammy on paper may be the better vocalist, but David Lee Roth is the better David Lee Roth, and that will always win.
Absolutely. I completely agree.
There's
I don't know, there's no criteria for this, but there's something about a certain type of rock band that they are the epitome of what they are. And AC/DC is the best way I can describe that. They do what they do, and it's simple, and they do it over and over and over again, but nobody can touch them, okay, at what they do. I would feel like in terms of shred rock, David Lee Roth era Van Halen is one of those things. You can't touch them.
Yes,
At
it's
that.
magical. It's absolutely magical. Alex's book was very good about talking about that era of the band. If you've read that, the Alex Van Halen book.
No, I've heard it's great though. I actually, because Alessandro in Nine Inch Nails is a massive. I don't know if you know that he's an absolute shredder of a guitar player.
I did not know that.
Predating his interest in electronics, he came to the U.S. to go to like Guitar Institute or whatever. He's a shredder, and at some point he recommended a book. I think it was called Van Halen Rising.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he's like, just read the book. I was like, I never thought I'd read a Van Halen book, but sure, why not? Excellent book.
Yeah.
And it's incredible to me how much of what big Cream fans the Van Halen brothers were. Because I love Cream as well. I would just never draw that parallel between the guitar pyrotechnics of Van Halen and Slowhand, but there you have it.
Yeah. It's crazy, man. We all pull something from everything, and I love digging into people's. Okay, I'm going to do one more here. I'm sorry if I borrow 2 more minutes of your time.
Hey, I'm more A or B.
No.
Fire?
No. Just a random crazy thing that I ask people in my personal circle. So if you had to give me your top 5 favorite bands in no particular order, it could change the second after you say it. What would they be?
Well, the top 3 is always spoken for. Led Zeppelin, Beatles, Queen. And then the spots beyond that, it just depends. I mean, The Police is one of my favorites. I don't know, Radiohead's one of my favorites. Depeche Mode's one of my favorites. The 4 and 5, beyond the Trinity, so to speak, I feel like things are always shifting.
Yeah.
And, I'm forgetting quite a bit as well. But I can say without a doubt, 1 through 3 are spoken for.
Yeah, I'm the same. My 4 and 5 shift. I have Pearl Jam, Nine Inch Nails, Zeppelin is the top 3, and then at 4 and 5, it's always in the moment. That's why I say it could change. But thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Dude, I thank you so much for your time. We're gonna link all this up for everyone to check it out, and I'll see you guys out on the road.
Well, thank you. It'd be great to meet in person. I appreciate the time, and thanks for getting the book out there. Wish you the best of luck with your school. I think what you're doing is fantastic. So thank you. For you.
Thanks so much, man. I really appreciate it. This has been an amazing, I wanted to be a rock star my whole life, and this platform with YouTube and these interviews and teaching the next generation, it's the coolest thing. And it's given me the freedom to get to go out in the middle of the week and see one of my favorite bands multiple times and not have to worry about a real job the next day. So rock and roll.
Beautiful. Well, it'll be great to meet in a few months.
Yeah, man. That'd be very cool.
All right, man. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. See you later.